Thank you, everyone. Welcome back to our next talk by Milena Djordjevic from TX Services. TX Services are Open Day sponsor. We want to thank them once again for making this happen and possible. TX Group AG is actually a subsidiary, a media company headquartered in Zurich. Through a portfolio of daily and weekly newspapers, magazines, and digital platforms, as well as its own printing facilities, it is the largest media group in Switzerland. Additionally, as a leading digital hub, with almost 80% of Swiss consumer internet traffic passing across our websites and apps, they provide media and platforms with enabling technology solutions to drive their businesses. Our next talk is actually on the topic of empowering journalism and on the tricky balance between providing the users and readers with as much info about an event or a happening, whilst also retaining their attention. A bit more about that by Milena, who I welcome to the stage to join us and start her talk.
Thank you, Milos.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Today I will be discussing how we can approach automatic text summarization and how this can be maybe a part of solution of the future of journalism. In a moment. Okay. So, over 70% of words on a web page is not read per average visit. That leaves less than 30% actually being acknowledged by user. And what that means specifically, it means that 28% of content is making the single largest impact on user understanding of some article or some news. And if we couple this with information that human attention span is in average 8 seconds and that we had 12 seconds beginning of this century, we have a decreasing trend in human attention. We just don't have the same focuses anymore, and this just makes it harder for content creators to convey their messages, convey their ideas, and give us the information that otherwise we would probably not have focus to read. So, should maybe shorter text be a part of solution if we have less attention, if we have less focus, if we just observe less content? Maybe the key takeaway is just give us shorter content. But today I will actually argue why this is not exactly the solution and why automatic text summarization can maybe be part of this and can empower the future of this industry. My name is Milena Djordjevic and I work as data scientist for TX Services. TX Services is part of TX Group, and as Milos mentioned, we are part of a larger corporation that already has several news agencies and it is in journalism area. So before we get to the future, maybe we should take a look at the past. So maybe if we observe journalism as a written word and how we transmitted it throughout the time, we can go back to the first mention of written words where we had clay tables in Mesopotamia over 5,000 years ago. And then we had first newspapers in ancient Rome in 59 BC. Then this was followed with a mass production of printing press and mass production of newspapers in 15th century. And then we had the 1990s digital newspaper. And as you can see, time periods between these milestones have been getting shorter and shorter, making us wonder how soon is the next milestone and what will it be. Definitely technology has made a huge impact on this, and maybe artificial intelligence has also making an impact on this. But if we take a look at AI for language processing, we have history that's younger than 100 years. We have Turing test that was conducted in 1950, meaning that the definition of artificial intelligence was just very soon. So this was an entrance to symbolic NLP and the age that was marked between 50s and 90s, where we had some first attempts to make machine understand language. And in 2010s, we already had use of deep learning and some of its frameworks for neural NLP, which also is an ongoing procedure now. And maybe, as you know, some of the language models are ruling the world of NLP. So all of this is something that we can thank to when we have this rising adoption of AI for communication, either very improved translation systems or maybe some better voice assistants or overall NLP technology is really getting integrated in all sorts of services that we are using daily and that we don't even notice. So definitely these kind of milestones can make an introduction to what we want to see in journalism and what we want to see when we are reading the newspapers for maybe 5 to 10 years. And that's exactly the timeline that I want to show you, because one of the very nice way to maybe have a midterm prediction of where some technology will be is Gartner Hype Cycle. And Gartner later, actually earlier this year, published a report on artificial intelligence where it says that this kind of technology, natural language processing, has entered firmly the phase of disillusionment. And what does it mean? That means that for years we had this peak of inflated expectations, and we were hearing about NLP having the best kind of performance model that has sentient, the model that will be able to speak like a human, understand languages, and even surpass our expectations. But now we're entering a phase where we want our real-world applications. We actually want industries to get into NLP field, work into it, and see how they can make sense of it. And this also means that in 5 to 10 years, we will reach actually plateau productivity. That means then in less than a decade, we will have commercial uses of this technology. So this is actually quite a good time for leaders in industry to get into this and say, this is not only a tech thing, maybe this is something that we can apply across industries. Maybe we should be the ones leading the change. So I'm very excited for next 5 to 10 years, especially working in news and media. But before we get to some specific industries, some of the worth mentions are, of course, leaders in this and big names. All of these big names are either having their own research teams and are driving the change to NLP. They have been developing these models. They have been developing frameworks. Some of the frameworks like Transformers, BERT, GPT-3, they're all part of research teams, and they are all something that is being used even in some startups like Grammarly and so on. But maybe a worth mention also is OpenAI. Maybe some of you have heard about OpenAI. They have been releasing several versions of GPT, GPT-1, 2, 3. And with GPT-3, we have several versions as well. They have been updating for months. And one of its I guess highest performing now is Da Vinci. So I did a bit of a chatting with Da Vinci and I asked him what are the applications of NLP in media and journalism. And what was interesting that the first thing that it stated is summarization of articles. Then it was named entity recognition and sentiment of news stories. So it was interesting for me because I, as a data scientist, of course, know that these applications make sense, but what does someone who is actually in journalism, is he or she introduced to it? Do they know about it? So if GPT-3 knows, maybe also the experts in the area should know. So the experts in this area and maybe the biggest names here are the major news agencies across the world, and they're all openly using AI. And for example, we have Wall Street Journal who has their own content management systems almost fully powered by AI. They're using Heliograph for content generation, for some kind of personalizations. So if they are using this and they are leading the change, then maybe all the major and other companies across the world, or maybe just smaller ones, can take advantage of this hype and just try to see what's going on. That's exactly what our thinking was. As a group with tens of different brands in news and news agencies overall, we were wondering how we can maybe leverage this technology, how we can use this to maybe empower our products, improve some processes internally, how we can keep this attention, ever decreasing attention of our users, and maybe fulfill our mission, which is to provide users with high quality journalism. And that's not just a word for us, that's something that we're actually aiming to do. And as someone who has been working in news for some time, I can see how data science can help between journalists and between the product itself. So maybe today I will convey some of the messages, hopefully, and get your questions into this and maybe spark some conversation later on. But for us, what was really the answer was when we read, of course, that optimal summary length was between 15 and 30% original text. It just fit, because if you remember the first slide, we have less than 30% of article content that actually makes an impact on users. So we have summaries which can be less than 30%, and we have this, I guess, window of content that can make an impact. So our goal was to automate this article summarization process. In this way, we would derive the most important facts from some article. We would just simplify the messages for users, just not needing to get into all the specific and maybe increase the understanding. And we would structure the information flow throughout the summary. And our thought process, to be more precise, is that we had a lot of articles in our databases. We had pairs of articles and some of the author-written summaries. Then we decided to go to requirements and what we actually want to achieve, because not every summary is the same. Maybe you want some kind of a bullet point, maybe you want summary that is easily spoken, maybe you want something else. And that also can be and can make quite an impact on how your process as data scientist is going further. So once we settled on the requirements, we decided to go to the solutions. Do we already have something? Maybe we don't need to develop everything ourselves. If this industry is really, really fast pacing and so on, maybe we have some kind of solutions that we can use. So we did machine evaluation, and if this solution performance was satisfactory, we would then run it by humans. At the end, we would get a summary. So it sounds really simple, but at the end, not all solutions fit all the purposes. And that's exactly what we got. So after evaluating through the humans and through the machines, we realized that we need to actually go to the journalists and ask them, is this something that you can use? Is this something that you can actually incorporate in everyday content that users will read? And they defined a set of different quality criteria, which for us at first were surprising, because we didn't really know what they want, even though we did some kind of requirements defining. At the end, something that they're looking at is what we want to optimize on. So they decided to take a look at the capturing of facts, how much this summary can cover the facts. Then they wanted to see what is the text quality, and not text quality in general, but text quality for our newspapers. Then we wanted to see overall grammaticality, and we wanted to see how we can use this summary potentially as a teaser. And we had also user experience, and this meant that we want to see how easily we can integrate this solution in our own content management systems, how journalists can actually incorporate it in their everyday work. So summary of this is that if we take a look at the scores, we said the grammaticality was quite high. This was really, really good, because at first there was some disbelief that this is going to be achieved. And after that, we saw that capturing of facts was also quite good, especially for one of the tools. And we also saw that journalistic text quality can be improved. Usability as a teaser was not as good, and user experience was definitely bad. But as a reminder, again, we were just evaluating tools that were out there on the market. And just for the simplicity's sake, I said we have tool A and tool B, which were the highest performing ones that we actually evaluated. And we realized that maybe this thought process that we have can be expanded. Maybe we can do something more, because we had this set of criteria and we were not really satisfied with the results at the end. So we decided to expand the process, and besides getting the evaluation of the solutions that already exist, build our own model. Advantages here are obvious. We will have our own data, we will customize by our own design, we know actually what our journalists are asking for, we know what kind of language we were going to use. So we decided to go in this direction and see how this compares. And similarly, we ran them through the set of these criteria. Hopefully, we would get some of the improvement, and in grammaticality, we achieved quite good results. We were also able to get a good capturing of facts. We improved on journalistic text quality, which is also an advantage of customization. but we didn't get a good score in usability as a teaser. To be honest, it was quite a low score, and we needed to be quite straight with what was happening. But overall user experience was quite good because of course, inference speed, because of interactions of users and journalists with our services, and obvious advantages of this customized solution. So because we didn't have all the parts in, we wanted to evaluate and get maybe a bit of more insight on how our models are performing. What are they saying to us? And this is an example of one text. One is run by method B and one is run by method A. These are two different models optimizing on different criteria. On method B, we see that the model picked sentences from the beginning, from the middle, and from the end, almost evenly distributing this kind of information retrieval. And for method A, it was a bit different because we had more information from the beginning and more information from the end. We realized throughout the process that this is something that is useful for us because we know where the model is driving most of its efforts to get our information, to simplify the messages. And we also realized that this maybe can be something that journalists can use. Maybe this is some kind of transparency that they would need in order to get a better summary. So again, we get back to our thought process and realize that after getting our models done, after training everything and doing everything by ourselves, we would get an automatic summary. And we would add additional step where we would, in a way, get a navigation by journalists. This would be a step where we would get a feedback from them, where we would allow them to customize this kind of summary and get a final one that would go into a product. So obvious advantages of this is that we would get a better summary. It's the journalists at the end, the experts, who are the ones getting a final decision here. And we would get the most important facts, still simplify the messages, we would structure the information flow as we agreed, and we would receive this feedback and navigate the process with them. This would also allow them to have more control over this process, because at the end, it's not about automating this article summarization process, but it's also about facilitating the whole process and including journalists in the whole decision-making of it. So maybe I would just conclude this presentation with some future work also, that we're working with Media Technology Center and ETH, and we're working on this specific topic. So we're bringing this more closer to reality and researching different kind of paths, which is also what is article summarization is about, because at this point of time we can have really good solutions, but it's also worth exploring, and it's also worth getting into, I guess, more research part of it. I would end this with a very nice quote that I found, that AI algorithms are more like musical instruments, that they are like people, meaning that we don't want AI algorithms to be something that will stand alone and that we will give all the power to. We actually want the artist to be the one who is guiding the process. And yes, I will leave you too with these kind of thoughts, and if you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them. Thank you.
Hi, Milena. Thanks for the amazing presentation. We actually do have a couple of questions here for you. First one is, we hear this from a lot of sides, like the 8-second attention span rule. Do you perhaps maybe have any reference or a paper that you can call for? Because we have heard this fact a lot of the times, but never managed to catch it in a scientific publication or something like that.
Yes, this kind of information is precise, to be specific for this one, is derived from Nielsen report. Mm-hmm. Nielsen is, as you know, doing all sorts of reports, how scientifically backed up. There are several papers actually, because there is a bit of taboo around this topic, saying that you cannot measure human attention span, that it's really difficult, but under certain conditions they did measure. So according to their set of rules, it is around 8 seconds and decreasing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have a bit more time for another question. So you were currently talking about summarizing articles, and in your company you're using AI to summarize text articles. But are you also using them to kind of expand articles, to, you know, maybe produce a higher word output in an article?
No, this is not something that is focus of our attention. We have actually authors writing the articles. They have full control over what and how much they want to put in the text. And if you're talking maybe about text generation and using AI for generating more news, it's not at the state where you can safely generate some of the facts and get it into the product, because this is not yet the issue of reliability is not yet solved.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. That's kind of all the time we have for now. Any more questions you can direct to her via her email address, or if for the guys who are here, you can catch her in the call. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for holding the talk.